Hi, it's Kirby Summers, and I welcome you to the Epstein Project podcast. Today, I'm going to be covering two stories. The first one is about the Daily Beast and its connections to Jeffrey Epstein, that no one has connected these dots, no one has talked about. My second story is an update on what's happening with Leslie Wexner. So this is an important podcast. It's a two deep dives and breaking information. And as before I start the podcast, once again, I want to thank you for your continued support. Listen, the reason that I write my Epstein books, which are now several, and I put out my private story, The Billionaire's Woman, a memoir, is so that it, instead of like you just giving me a contribution for my work, because it has been, thank goodness, with the help of all of my followers, a lot of my followers who continue to support my work, that I can keep on working on this story and bringing you um, stuff you're not going to find on mainstream. They're not going to tell on each other. And the cover up, as you know, in this story is ongoing, severe, and it goes back generations. It's not just like Epstein was one person and he's gone and the problem is gone. That's not what's going on. And if you've been following this story, you know that's the case. So, yeah, I want to thank you for your support. And the way that I stay doing my job here is through the sale of my books, through my newsletter, which everybody has loved, the Epstein Project newsletter, which goes out every Tuesday. It's just stuff that is just too, and let's just say it really pinpoints who the players are, what they're doing behind the scenes. It's all research, um, long form essays, and I put them out every Tuesday. I don't want to share information on Twitter that can be flagged for whatever reason, so I send that information out separately. I have a free version, so every fourth Tuesday it goes out free, to people who are thinking about joining, but you haven't made the decision yet. But people who become paid subscribers receive it every Tuesday. And of course, I have my Patreon. So thank you for your support. Let me just get started because there's a lot to unpack here. I'm going to be jumping around windows. So if I have to pause for a minute or two, bear with me. Let me um, get to the first window. So I'm going to be discussing a tweet that I posted earlier. And that tweet is, so pretty much I'm just going to read my tweet. The Daily Beast is a Barry Diller company. Chelsea Clinton sits on the board of directors. Diller has a very cozy relationship with the Clintons. He co-founded Fox News. Daily Beast has been framing the Jeffrey Epstein story with factual inconsistencies from day one. Example: Daily Beast claims Dalton's headmaster, Donald Barr, did not hire Jeffrey Epstein. Based on my research, Donald Barr did hire Jeffrey Epstein before leaving Dalton. For reasons unknown to me, they continue to deny this as a fact. However, it seems the Barr family's connection to the OSS, the CIA, and Mossad, and I'm going to just break off here and say that I cover this extensively in my book, Bonnie's Clyde. Donald Barr's parents, so they would be the grandparents of former Attorney General Bill Barr. They were working with the sort of what the spy company for the United States. So the early version of the OSS. They were part of that through Columbia University, and I go into that in Bonnie's Clyde. So anyway, I go on and say that, however, it seems that the Barr family connection to the OSS, CIA, and Mossad began with Donald Barr's parents. And so this seems to be a thread that the Daily Beast and other mainstream media want us to forget. There's something about Dalton they don't want us near. So, that's still an unfolding story. Chelsea Clinton, I show photographs of Chelsea Clinton with Barry Diller. And then, of course, I show that famous photograph that everybody has become aware of Ghislaine Maxwell at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. So, Chelsea Clinton sits on the board of directors um, for the parent company of the Daily Beast. And before I go any further with that, I just thought it was really funny because these people they like to play around with sort of clues, right? They'll show clues that they're connected or they're like mocking, and they do it in plain sight. So the parent company of the Daily Beast is IAC Group. Now, AIC, if you unscramble those letters, what does it say? It says CIA. And it's like Jeffrey Epstein had another company with scrambled letters that also referred to the CIA. It's like these people are just, um, it's like they're thumbing their nose at the world because until the Jeffrey Epstein story broke in 2019, when basically all of us on social media started to just do our own research and put together our own information and started to share information on platforms, just social media platforms like Twitter and other places. Until then, really, all this stuff was just uh, stuff that's been long buried, um, kind of like there, but not there. You don't know to look for it unless you know what you're looking for. Sometimes it's a happy surprise. I'll be searching for one thing and I'll stumble upon something else, and then it connects to another piece of the puzzle somewhere else. All right, so to get back to my tweet, then I go on to say, and really drum roll for this because Barry Diller and Edgar Bronfman Jr., I want to say, not senior, but still he's a Bronfman. And by the way, he was in Epstein's Black Book. They're business partners. Um, and so we know that name from the fact that it was Senior who connected with Jeffrey Epstein through Bear Stearns when Jeffrey Epstein worked at Bear Stearns. And Bronfman is also related to the Nexium sex cult. So that's an interesting connection that nobody put together. Nobody put together that Bronfmans and Barry Diller pretty much own the Daily Mail and other related companies. All right, so they have, I went to the SEC and I put an SEC document online. So basically, um, Bronfman has been a director of IAC since February 1998, and Barry Diller has been a director and chairman as well as CEO of IAC and its predecessors since August of 1995. Okay, so he's also the chairman of Expedia. I mean, so like they're in charge of a lot of and he's even connected to ABC, Barry Diller, as he is to Disney. I mean, all of these companies, it's all everything. What I like to call it circles within circles because they're all of these names and companies and people are just interrelated and they go back generations and they have not been exposed as a group and they're all connected of course to Leslie Wexner, and I'll be getting to Leslie Wexner soon. So what else did I discover about Barry Diller? Well, guess what? Do you remember Ghislaine Maxwell's Terramar? Okay, well, Barry Diller is one of the Ocean Elder supporters. So he is on the board with Richard Bronson, Richard Rockefeller, and Ghislaine Maxwell on, you know, on Terramar. Like seriously? And no wonder Terramar immediately disbanded 1 week after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in the United States. It took a little longer for the Terramar in the UK to be dismantled, but it was. It's like that was some dirty vehicle. Anyway, I'm going to just keep going here. I want to add that the Daily Mail and its parent company, hold on, give me a second. The Daily Mail and its parent company were are being sort of sanctioned by Google. So the reason for this is really fascinating. So it seems like the IAC group, which is the parent company again of the blog, The Daily Beast, which they developed these browser-based software products. And so what these products do is that, like, they're browser extensions. And so they're offered with to like these. I'm going to just get to the bottom line. What it does is that if you're using Google Chrome, um, they have uh, adjusted it so that if you put in certain search words, IAC has its own search engine. It's called My Way. And so that it will boot out the Google algorithm for their own search platform, and it will give you everything that goes back to IAC so that they are playing with the search results that come up from Google and having their own information show up as if it's Google. So Google in December of 2020, and it was revealed in the Wall Street Journal, decided that they're going to sanction them because the IAC software and advertising is a significant source of income for them. However, it's 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 deceptive. It's like deceptive advertising. And it's just like they were doing this without the consent of Google. And so I've not researched whether or not Google has imposed severe penalties, but they basically, put them on the carpet and said, we're going to do that. Okay, so, I'd love to hear your feedback on the exposure of the Daily Beast. I mean, it just goes to show that mainstream media, we really can't trust these sources because, I mean, you already know that mainstream media is owned, what, by 5 different people/groups, all interconnected. They feed us what they want us to know. And most people just read it and they're like, oh, okay, that's the case. So the other thing that I've noticed with a lot of the articles, and specifically the Daily Beast, is that they're portraying Jeffrey Epstein as if he's a sole pedophile. Like he is the most prolific pedophile in the world. All right, so but like he's alone. Like he doesn't have perhaps hundreds or maybe even thousands of co-conspirators. They're not focusing on Leslie Wexner or the Bronfmans or any of the other people. They're certainly not outing Bill Clinton. They're just doing a lot of things to form the narrative. It's really very disconcerting. They're working in tandem with ABC, which by the way is also connected to Barry Diller. Barry Diller started his career working at ABC, and then he created the movie division, and he remained very attached to ABC. And then, ABC is owned by the Disney company. And again, Barry Diller is very connected to the Disney company. So again, anything that I hear from ABC, and they have their own podcast, by the way, about the Jeffrey Epstein case. So like, it's almost like they're flooding the internet with their information so that, a small little podcast like mine, you may not hear, oh well, this is who owns it, and it's almost like giving Jeffrey Epstein the ability to write his own articles. And so we have to remember that there was a time that Jeffrey Epstein and Mort Zuckerman wanted to purchase the New York Magazine. Why did they want to purchase New York Magazine? So that they can literally write their own articles. Not that they weren't doing that already. That's what people hire public relations companies for, right? They have these articles written. All right, so let me move on to Leslie Wexner. And for that, I have to go into my email. So on March the 24th, I received an email from a person who I will not name, but I will say this. My name is blank, and I am currently working on a documentary series for Hulu about the rise and fall of Victoria's Secret and its CEO, Les Wexner. And so then she goes on to say, I've listened to you on podcasts, read a number of your writings, know that you've done a lot of research. So bottom line, we exchanged a couple of emails back and forth, and they wanted my participation. So like I'm thinking, and they're willing to pay me. All right, if we had reached a mutual agreement, they're willing to pay me as a paid consultant. So I'm thinking, okay, well that sounds fair. I'm really tired of people ripping off my work without paying me. So I'm like, sure, I'm open to a conversation. But before having this conversation, I just shot this person another email, and I'm like, hey, let me just find that email so that I can read that to you. So I said, here's my thing. The research that I do puts me in constant contact with survivors of severely sexual abused victims. This disrupts my days in a variety of ways. As such, my daily schedule at the present time is unpredictable. No 2 days are the same, and I cannot plan too far in advance. I did a little poking around Hulu and Victoria's Secret and am concerned your docuseries might be biased on Leslie Wexner's side. If this is the case, then I cannot participate. So it's best that you tell me first whether or not the docuseries has a bias. So to which she responded, this will be a balanced journalistic project. Okay, what does that mean? It means that they're gonna show, quote, two sides. I don't see two sides in the Jeffrey Epstein, Leslie Wexner, Victoria's Secret story. There's only one side. I mean, there's no two sides to rape. There's no two sides to human trafficking. There's no two sides to this. There's just one side. All right, so I did a little more digging, and I find out that the producer produced some documentaries actually that I enjoyed. Produced the documentary that's on Netflix right now, Studio 54 documentary. And I watched it because I'm a kid that was a Studio 54 person, right? And I remember those days. And Studio 54 was around, like for less than 2 years. I'm sure it was less than 2 years. Uh, but Ian Schrager, his father was Meyer Lansky's associate. And I don't know if many people are aware of this. which is why Roy Cohn, who had a child sex trafficking ring connected to the Franklin child sex abuse scandal. If you don't know anything about that, just poke in those search terms, but please perhaps don't use known search engines. Um, he was connected to, again, his own child sex trafficking ring, and he was part of uh, people who had blackmail material on J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, that's a really deep rabbit hole that, again, I cover in my books. So, like, if you want information, I have books on my website, kirbysummers.com, that you can just pick up and you get them today. All right, so I then thought that's interesting, and then I looked to see what other um, documentaries they were responsible for, and I find out that they did a whole documentary on Roy Cohn. Isn't that interesting? And of course, it's called "Where's My Roy Cohn?" And some of you may have heard of it, and I'm like, I see. So they met Roy Cohn, who was the mobster's attorney. So I'm going to call him the equivalent of Alan Dershowitz for our time that we're talking about today with relation to Jeffrey Epstein. But still, there are connections of Roy Cohn to Bear Stearns, because Bear Stearns, after they folded in 2008, they continued working with Roy Cohn through another corporation, as well as with Donald Trump. Okay, so there are still all of these circles within circles. So then I looked at another documentary that they worked on, and they worked on Ronald Reagan. Well, who knew? So I'm like, Ronald Reagan to me reminds me of Gary Webb. Gary Webb was the investigative journalist who exposed the drugs that were being brought into California, poor neighborhoods in California, and distributed to into Black communities, into these marginalized communities. It was the beginning of a crack baby epidemic. Children were selling themselves on the streets, and it became like this widely known scandal that was repressed. That was the like New York Times, all of the other quote mainstream media that people used to believe in and used to believe they were unbiased, decided to come out against Gary Webb and say that no, that he had not gone to Colombia, that he had not met the parties that he was talking about, that he had not connected the CIA to this, and they attempted to discredit him. And as we all know, Gary Webb, quote, committed suicide at some point after they tried to destroy his career. Um, well, this is not the first journalist who's met an untimely demise. We have Danny Casolaro, who I compare all the time to Gary Webb. So I kind of poked around a little bit more into this Reagan documentary that is connected to this new Leslie Wexner Victoria's Secret documentary. And I thought, okay, well, if they're going to be talking about Ronald Reagan, well, then I want to hear about Gary Webb, and I want to hear about the drugs, and I want to, well, none of that. So they don't focus on October surprise, the way that Ronald Reagan got elected by spending money and making sure that the Iranian hostages, the hostages held by Iran, were not released until after he became president, so that he would take the credit for that, as opposed to his predecessor, who was Jimmy Carter. So that none of that. I mean, the most these people that are working on the documentary for Leslie Wexner did was just mild things that the public had heard of that were in mainstream media, things that people already knew about. That is what they call, I suppose, balanced reporting. I'm sorry, that is not what I call a balanced documentary. So the way that you already are familiar with fake articles, meaning that a public relations company, as we have seen recently with the Ghislaine Maxwell coverage, people will write an article, put it on in a newspaper, magazine, put it online, and suddenly it forms narrative. But many people don't know that that's a paid for article. A lot of what we have read about Jeffrey Epstein, where they were all paid pieces. A lot of what we've read about Leslie Wexner, starting with his maybe in the 1980s when he started to give interviews, those were arranged articles. You know, people like Peggy Siegel have been involved in this, the careful crafting of the PR image of people like Jeffrey Epstein, Leslie Wexner. So what Leslie Wexner appears to be doing is, yeah, this is going to be a reputation defender type documentary so that his name is no longer, quote, tarnished, because of course they're going to run that clip, I am sure, that the other documentary, Filthy Rich, ran, where Leslie Wexner said, and I just hate even remembering it, that, oh, he had no knowledge and that Epstein stole money from him, which, by the way, is something that the Daily Beast keeps harping on. So there's some cover up there and there's some collusion there, and I do not trust them. I haven't trusted them forever, even before I started working on the Jeffrey Epstein case, for reasons that I will share at another time. So Okay, so anyway, I basically turned them down because they are working on this documentary for the rise and fall of Victoria's Secret and Leslie Wexner, and it's going to be a piece to try to resurrect the Victoria's Secret brand. And hey, no way we're going to resurrect anything that Wexner is connected to, nor should we have anything to help them with, no matter who takes over. Whoever takes over Victoria's Secret, uh, even if it's really bought out by a real unaffiliated unaffiliated entity, because Sycamore Partners, who Wexner claimed was, oh, there are these, there's a separate company. No, it was headed by a guy that used to work for Leslie Wexner. So everything is always very incestuous with this group. Um, so yeah, there's a documentary coming, and as with all of these documentaries, I'm very suspect of the message they're portraying. Okay, well, again, leave your comments here, and I'm happy to respond to them. And again, thanks for following me on Twitter. I'll have all of my links below. Um, I do suggest that you listen to Ryan Dawson. He and I finally connected, and we had a really good, lengthy conversation. It was wonderful. It's like we just kept finishing each other's sentences, and of course continue to support Sean Atwood, who, I've been sending some people over his way, like Kai Bickle. Um, we have to get the stories out. At this point, we can only really depend on each other to tell you guys what's really going on, because I don't trust mainstream media, and I think many of you don't trust them anymore either, and for good reason. All right, well, again, this is Kirby Summers. Thank you for listening to the Epstein Project, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye. Have a good day.